This lesson is going to be the most important lesson on JavaScript because we're going to be looking at functions. And functions are a core part of what can be done with JavaScript. So what are functions? Functions give you the ability to return and run a block of code. And it gives you the ability to run that block of code multiple times. So remember before when we had onClick and we could equal it and we could do something like the alert. And then within the alert we had, and then when we refresh, we click the button and it invokes that little alert to pop up. Well, this essentially is a function. And that's how functions work. They're a preset block of code that runs and it does something. And in this case, what we were doing is we were outputting the value of hello. So it's taking a parameter, it knows what to do with the parameter, it pops it into that little alert button, and it pops it into the dialog of the alert button. So great. What if we want to create our own alert? Instead of an alert, maybe we want to change the word JavaScript to something else. And this is where we can create that dynamic interaction. So let's do that. And we're going to start by creating a function. The function, we can name functions as well, just like variables, where we were setting the values of those variables. And this is another one that we could customize what our value is going to be. So we've got a function called message. And right now what it's doing is it's expecting a value to be passed in. So I can update alert. I can send the value of hello there and nothing happens. And this is where what we do with that content that's coming in and use it within our block of code. So we've got an argument that's being passed in there. So let's just put a variable name of a to hold that argument, and we're going to console log out the value of a. So let's see what happens. We click the button and wow, we've got something happening here. We've got hello popping up down there. So what do you think we would have to do? And going back a few lessons where we had this document, query selector, inner HTML, remember this one? What would we have to do when we click the button that we could update the word JavaScript to a customized message? So that's the challenge, and I'll show you the solution coming up. So if you want to take a crack at it, pause the video, and I'll give you a hint. You've already learned what we need to do. So try that out, and I'll show you the solution coming up. So the solution was actually really easy because we saw that we pass in this value of hello, we click the button, hello is showing up. Where's that code coming from? It's coming from the function. So every time this gets clicked, JavaScript says, I know a function called message. I know where it's located, and I know what code I have to run whenever this function is called. So what's happening is function is being called. We're passing in an argument. The argument value is hello. So if you update this hello to hello world and refresh the page and click it, now it's hello world. So whatever value, string value is being passed in there, it's being picked up within the function, and the function is saying, okay, hello world is now equal to a, and then I'm console logging out a. So the rest of the part was fairly straightforward, where we did what we did earlier, where we assign a value to the inner HTML of h2, and in this case, it's just equal to a. So let's see what happens. So do you think this is going to work? Do you think we still need to adjust something? What do you think is happening here? So when we click, we see that that's changing that value. And let's actually do something even more interesting. So let's set up a variable, and I'm going to call it b, and we'll start it out at 0. So every time this gets clicked, we're going to increment b by 1. So remember last lesson, shorthand format for b equals b plus 1 is just b plus plus. You'll see that used all the time. So now we've got a message of a, which is hello world, and we've got a value of b. So what if we want to output our message? So let's do that as well. So we'll set up a variable, and we'll just call it output. And in this case, we're going to do a plus, and remember how you can add in a space there, so that's the two single quotes, and then the value of b. And instead of outputting just a, I'm going to output as the output. So what do you think is going to happen now? Click the button, we get hello world 1. So what's happening is that the code is run. The global variable, so outside of the function, that's a global variable. Inside of the function, that's going to be a local variable with only used within the function if it's declared within the function. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail in the upcoming lesson. So what's happening here is b is assigned a value of 0. And every time I click this, we saw it could invoke and it could run this function. And then what was happening, it was running that function. We were passing in an argument, but over here, we were incrementing b. So every time that button got clicked, b added 1. And then we had an output of a plus space b, and we were outputting that. So that was our new variable of output, and it contained this newly created, freshly minted value. And what we're doing is we're simply outputting that value. So every time we click it, we're actually incrementing the value. And if I want to see the value of b, I know that b is at 7. So every time I click it, b is no longer 7, it's 8. And so this is the core principles of what JavaScript can do, because it gives us all of this flexibility and allows us to dynamically work with the code and update things and create that user interaction with the code. So now it's up to you. I've got a new challenge for you coming up in the next exercise. And what I want you to do is create 3 different buttons that are going to invoke 3 different functions that are going to update the values of each one of those. And what I want to happen is I want to output those values in that document h2 element. So I know it's a little bit of a challenge, and I'll show you the solution coming up in the next lesson.